please feel free to try the pizzas at the back. We do have vegetarian options as well for people who need. So let's start the meetup. Thank you again for coming down all the way here to GovTech HQ to attend this meetup tonight. So this meetup will be called Progress Over Perfection by our wonderful colleagues over here. So if you would like to join this meetup community and receive more information in real time, please join the Stack Telegram that you see on screen right now. So just a bit of admin stuff before I pass the time over. Please note that this meetup will be recorded. So if you do want to refresh yourself afterwards or even introduce this meetup to other friends, please look at the Singapore Government Developer Portal, which we'll be sharing the link with you later. So that's where you'll be able to see all the video on demand of all of our meetups, not only this one. So I hope you guys have also come prepared with questions for our speakers because we'll be having a combined Q&A after all the presentations. And very quickly, the agenda for this evening. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know about GovTech, but just a quick introduction. So we do have 3 pillars that we would like to share: the products and engineering pillar, the services pillar, which is the biggest, as well as the governance pillar, where the Chief Information Security Officer sits. So this makes sure that all of our processes and all of our actions are safe and secure. And a little bit about the STACK community. So there are a number of initiatives that we run under the STACK community. STACK Meetup, which is the session you are here for, is one of which. And we have the STACK conference, which is something that a lot of people look forward to. So we have this every 2 years, and this is your year because we'll be having the STACK conference again this November. So do keep a lookout via our STACK Telegram, our STACK Meetup for information on how to register. And we are also having a StackX conference, which is a mini kind of conference next month. Registration is full, unfortunately, because there's a lot of demand. But once again, you can see the recordings on the developer portal as well, so no worries about missing out. And I'm sure all of you are very familiar with the format of our meetup. So it will be a great round of presentations from our speakers, and then followed by a question and answer where you can provide feedback to our team. You can ask any questions that you have in mind. And the next meetup that we'll be having, if anyone's interested, will be a cybersecurity focused one. So do keep a lookout for registration, which is actually opening tomorrow on meetup.com as well as Telegram. So more about the government developer portal that I talked about a lot. Basically, this is a resource portal for us where you can find a lot of pieces about our products, and you find technical resources and best practices, as well as resources like video on demands that I was talking about. So let me hand over the time to Immanuel. Manny, thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Joyce. Hi, greeting, folks. Wow, tough crowd. This feels like a stand-up comedy, but like with a tech focus. So, hi, I'm Immanuel from the Accessibility Enabling team. So my folks are over here all around. So Wave, LI team people. So there's Sien over there, coding, I think. Oh no, playing with Mike. That's Brian. That's Inuru, one of our interns. That's Royce, Wave. There's Mary, Kim. Later, Ming will join us. So a little bit about the Accessibility Enabling team. We are the first. Whoa, come. Okay, before I go there, I think some of you are wondering what in the world is A11y. So A11y essentially means accessibility. Why? Because there's 11 letters between A and Y. So you're wondering, wow, like, is it something to go viral? No. Actually, that's kind of like the community of accessibility professionals. We have tried to shorten and make accessibility a little bit more accessible for folks to. I can't spell accessibility well because I always get like the C and the S like flip. But ally is fun because we believe that we are allies to the cause and allies to people who are marginalized, who need to be digitally included. So a little bit about the team. So we are GovTech's first central accessibility team. What does that mean is we are an interdisciplinary team that serves the whole of GovTech and the whole of Gov in driving digital inclusivity out of GovTech. So the team spans across multiple disciplines. We have strategy folks, consulting, DevOps, come on, Wood, design research, interaction design, the whole stuff. We even have people who do events and partnership stuff too. So it's not open to public yet, but once it is, we will let you all know via the STACK Meetup. But the mission behind the LI team really is this. There are people who cannot use technology today, not just because they don't have access to technology, because we do give technology, phones and stuff for free. But websites today, there are reasons, multiple reasons why they are inaccessible. And our mission really is to bring awareness to the field and the practice of accessibility, because accessibility is really important. 90% of our lives are almost consumed by technology. And it's very important that no one in Singapore, and in part of our Smart Nation ambition, is left behind in the Smart Nation. So our scope of work is in four key areas. We consult public agencies who are interested in improving the digital inclusivity and accessibility of their website. We build open source technology, and we will showcase one of the products that we built later. We build capability among public officers. So we run a yearly learning event called Ally Week, where we gather all public officers to come into one room and talk about all things digital inclusion and accessibility. And for governance policy, we work with policy folks on what are rational standards for accessibility that we could revise or work or even introduce for public officers to follow in terms of building more inclusive services. So I just want to get a sense of the ground here. I guess you're here because the topic kind of interests you, right? How many of you guys are familiar with like digital accessibility as a discipline or digital inclusion? Just quick show of hands. Great, very nice. So you have heard of it somewhere. Maybe you come from a place where it's legislated. How many of you guys are completely new to this topic, but you're just completely interested? Like, I'm new to this. Tell me more. Fantastic. Encourage me a bit. I'm very, very nervous. So, why digital accessibility and inclusivity? Three large reasons. First, really is for user impact. So, as public officers, one of the things that we do is we serve the public. So public means everybody. And when it comes to all our digital services, everybody must use all our digital services easily. Accessibility is also a product excellence matter. So one of the things we love to say, it's accessible code is good code. The same thing for design. So UX designer, I'm a UX designer myself. It's really product excellence. Good design is accessible design. So you cannot go about it saying, let's leave accessibility to tech debt, because actually working on accessibility is clearing tech debt. It's good engineering. And lastly, accessibility is innovation. And why so? So often I get like people who say, accessibility cannot lah. My question to them is, why not? Because you need to look at accessibility as not as a problem to be solved, but as an opportunity for problem solving, an opportunity to produce something that otherwise you wouldn't have done. So the keyboard today that you have, fun fact, legend has it that the keyboard came from the typewriter. And you know the origin of a typewriter? The typewriter was invented because there was a visually impaired countess who wanted to write her letters independently. So back in the day when you have to write a letter, she had to dictate her letters. And sometimes if you want to write something a bit more spicy, a bit more intimate, not something you want to tell your PA to write for you. So she really wanted to write her letters herself. So the first typewriter was invented because someone needed an accessible way to write letters without having to write visually. So accessibility is innovation. And if you look at today, whatever inaccessible stuff you see today, if you solve it, you have innovation happening. So some of you are new to this field of accessibility. I want to give a frame of mind around accessibility. Often when you think about accessibility, you think of disability. And I get that because in parts of the world, the accessibility acts are really part of anti-discrimination acts for disability. But I want to broaden the view of accessibility for us. So often we think about accessibility as a permanent disability. So if you're born with a limb difference, or you're an amputee, you have access to one arm. So that's a permanent disability. You only can access technology using one arm. But there's also temporary disabilities. or temporary limitations to your ability. So if you injure your arm, maybe you gave someone too hard a slap and then you hurt your hand, so you only can use one hand, right? So at that point of time, you also have only access to one arm. But there's also cases of situational limitations to your ability. So situational means if I'm hugging my friend over here, or rather, if you're a parent and you're holding a child, you only have access to one arm, which is also a case with physical accessibility. So if you are carrying groceries, you only have access to one arm. So how many of us are really appreciative that doors open when we step forward? What magic that is! That is accessibility, and that is solving problems for both permanent, temporary, and situational. And today, broaden your view because that means accessibility serves everyone. It could serve you today. It could serve a person who has a disability. It could serve your parents, even your children. Accessibility is important for everyone. I guess you are quite convinced, but let me go a bit further. So often, like some of you folks, maybe you're from product, maybe you run a business. One of the things that we often hear from stakeholders is the disability stat sounds very small. So across the world, it's around 16% of the global population. In Singapore, plus minus 8%, a bit underreported. So you sound like 8% sounds like a very small number. Should we be building for 8% of the population? But the truth is, disability is going to be a universal experience for everyone because aging is a universal experience. How many of us here has avoided aging? Please let me know. I want your secret. That is something we should be publishing. So a reframe I'll give for stakeholders and people who are asking about numbers is instead of looking at disability as a small number, you should look at people, all of us are temporarily able from now to the time where we age. And with aging comes our abilities will start to dull, senses will dull. Visual impairment happens when you age. Hearing impairment happens when you age as well. And if technology today is built with accessibility, it's actually insurance for us today for a time when we age that we still can use technology independently. So that's really important because you don't want to be an engineer or a UX designer that builds technology and when you're aged, you'll be like, how come I never built for accessibility? And this thing I built is terrible. Yeah, you would ask your past self, why you never do this work? So your future self will thank you today if you build your services accessibly. And yes, everyone benefits from inclusive design. So the Accessibility Enabling Team's long-term ambition is to drive and advance inclusive design across the whole of government. The bigger ambition also is to really show a good example so folks from the private sector could see, hey, Gov's doing a pretty decent job. I think we should also do an equivalent. It's also part of design pride, right? If government services are known to be a particular flavor, if they're doing really good with usability, shouldn't designers outside in the private sector be doing just as good? So what we really believe is we really want to do more tech for public good. But to do so, we need to enable accessibility. There's a distinction between accessibility and inclusivity. So accessibility is a set of standards, but we really also want to drive inclusivity. So that's a bit broader. So accessibility is to address a specific need or problem. So if you look at the standards, it's usually an equivalent of a particular limitation to ability that you have. But inclusivity looks at a broader frame. So if you look at the service design layer, right, you can design a very accessible digital interface. Your buttons are screen reader friendly. You can use a switch to navigate your site. But when you receive a follow-up email after you submitted your grant application and the email is inaccessible, it's not inclusive, it's a net failure. So one of the things that we really do is we want to have a net improvement in the way we be inclusive to the whole of society. Another thing that we really believe when we advance inclusive design, it's that sometimes there's unintended benefits that happen. So what I mean by that is, how many of you guys speak Korean or understand Korean? How many of you guys watch Squid Games? Hey, how you watch Squid Game? You don't understand Korean? Exactly. You know what subtitles are? An accessibility feature. And that's an unintended benefit that we have because today we can watch foreign films without having to learn the language because there's subtitles that can be translated to the language that we can access. So that's a benefit that we all benefited from subtitles. Originally subtitles were for people who are deaf and the deaf community, but everyone benefited. One of the things I benefited from was from screen reader technology. So on your phone today, if you have an Apple device, I'm an Apple nerd. So open the accessibility settings, lots of accessibility settings. Look out for this thing called voiceover. So today, if you don't want to pay for audiobooks, right, turn on a screen reader, open Kindle, and the series synthetic voice today is really advanced. Sounds almost human-like, right? You can have an instant audiobook for free if you open a screen reader. Screen readers are designed for visually impaired people to access touch interfaces through audio cues, but all of us benefit from synthetic text-to-speech at a very high level. Thank you, Apple, but also Google has it too. It's called TalkBack. So you can open it up, get a free audiobook. And what we also really believe, right, is inclusive design should be as core a consideration during product development as much as security. One of the things that we do for security is you need to maybe have a pen test before you go out. We really believe that before you ship your product, you need to look into the inclusivity of your product because your users ultimately will benefit. So a little bit of the context of the macro scene that we belong to. So the government has signaled its goals in digital inclusion. So in 2018, we had the Digital Readiness Blueprint. Uh, Strategic outcome 4 says that we believe that every digital product or service should be designed for easy intuitive use by all Singaporeans. And when we say all Singaporeans, not all, but unless you're disabled. All means all. And that's why we believe that all service provided by government should be user-friendly and accessible to different population types and segments, including persons with disability. That's called out. In the recent enabling master plan that was announced in 2030, we made a public commitment for 100% of high traffic government websites to be fully accessible by 2030. So we've increased that stat a little bit from current 61. Still some ways to go, but that's a mission that the accessibility team is about. We want to push 61 to 100%. So cheer us on, okay? We are hoping to get that hopefully earlier by 2030, but if not, we're going to make it by 2030. Fingers crossed. All right. So hard twist a little bit. Most of you are familiar with a technology stack, right? One of the things that we want to introduce is a notion of a accessibility stack. So the accessibility stack that we have today comprises of 4 large areas. So this is the work that we do. We believe in accessibility testing and reporting. So we actually built a tool that one of my colleagues will show on how we can do that with automation. We believe in good reports. So you can test, but if you don't put it in a sensible report, again, net failure. So we believe in reporting that it is sensible, and my colleague will show that. We also believe that accessibility components should be reusable. So you shouldn't just build one component once off. You should scale it, reuse it. If someone does something good, share it. So that's something that we are working on as well. Believe in good standards, good guides, because you may have an appetite for accessibility, but if you don't have the capability, you probably need someone to give me something. Tell me, teach me how to fish rather than give me a fish. Yeah, we wrote some manuals on fishing for you. And lastly, one of the things we believe is in white space exploration. So often teams may be caught up in the production cycle. We need to ship, we need to ship. One of the things we believe in is exploring technology with accessibility focus in mind. So we have run some experiments on what does designing with inclusive product with inclusivity focus. We can't share much yet, but when some of these things are ready, we'll be happy to share that. But with this whole accessibility stack that public officers, digital teams can leverage on, because can leverage on testing, can leverage on components, it should be underguarded by connecting the community. So this is where user centricity is so key in digital inclusion and accessibility. So what we really believe is you can't design in isolation. There's a word that we love to borrow from the disability community, which is nothing about us without us. So if you're designing for your users, design with your users. One of the things that's very important for us is to do user research, test your community, engage the community, get their feedback, go out of the room, reach your users, hear from your users, and most importantly, hear from a diverse group of users, not just users who are capable of use technology. So some of the things that we have done. So the gamut of our work is not just with disability alone, but also with seniors, because really it's a spectrum, right? For visual impairment, if you serve for the edges, everyone in the middle benefits. We have run body storming sessions with people to interact with technology in context of a physical environment. And yes, that's our good friend over there. That's Saifullah, who uses augmentative communication technology. So that's really cool. Like the community is showing us how they use technology, and that's very powerful. When you see how they use technology, you will be better placed to innovate around technology. So that's testing with community. So some lessons we learned with, it's been a few years we've been engaging in the community, and there's three large lessons that we have today that is great for you to take home in your product development process and the way you build products. So first, we have learned to reframe the notion of tech savviness. So often, like we get like a requirements, like if you're going to recruit for a particular group of people to research on, sometimes we might put a criteria, say a person must be tech savvy, right? But tech savvy is it's not a very good term, because there are people who may, let's take seniors for example. One of the things in research we found out is seniors are actually quite familiar with technology. Some of them have been working with technology longer than we have, except they've been working on a desktop version of technology. They're very familiar with a mouse keyboard interaction. They struggle today because mobile touch interfaces is a completely new interaction. And added previously, last time, if you remember the days of Lotus, right? Software development cycles take probably a year. You buy a software every year, right? Now software development cycles are shortened, so updates push very, very fast. One of the things that I heard from a senior was, I've just learned how to use this interface, and then suddenly it disappeared. Can I go back to the previous one? Because previously you can use from Word 2000 to Word 95, right? But now you can't roll back. So it's very disorientating for folks when hot fixes, big updates are pushed very quickly, and the interface changes entirely. So we need to have a bit more nuance and distinction between what we mean by tech savviness. Maybe tech literacy may be a thing that we want to look into, but also looking into the familiarity between different surfaces. Are people literate with a desktop, like a version of technology? Are they very new to mobile interactions? And if they are, then that's your form of research will look a little different. A key thing around digital inclusion is not just about functionality, it's not just about giving accessibility features. One of the things that we are doing today, even with the private sector, especially with the private sector, because citizens' lives, they don't just pay taxes all year round. They don't just check their CPF statements all year round. What do they do every day? They use a Grab or not sponsored posts. Oh, come on, ride-hailing app. uh, they use healthcare, telemedicine. They purchase groceries from e-commerce app. So all these are applications that are outside of the government. So what's important here is to live independently, they need to use technology independently. So it's not just about accessibility features, it's about empowering digital independence. Can they live their lives independently if the applications they use for daily living is accessible? The answer is yes if it's accessible. And the answer is no if it's not accessible. It's disempowering if the apps that they use, if they book a Grab or book a ride and it is not screen reader friendly, so they don't know that their ride has arrived, or if they use a e-commerce app and the pay button is not accessible. That's the one thing you need to do to get revenue, but it is just not accessible. Digital independence. And lastly, we really believe that accessibility is future proofing. As I said earlier on, your future self will thank you for building technology that's accessible. But also, one of the things that we really believe about like future proofing is when you look at digital inclusion, you think of who is left out in your product development cycle. You will think about always whose needs need to be heard, whose voice is missing in the conversation. When you do that as a habit, as a designer, as a product person, you not only innovate, but you actually future-proof your products because you're always listening to the ground. So one of the things we really learn is, hey, accessibility has a good side benefit for us. It's not just like serving now, but we're serving the future. So that's pretty much what I have for you. Next up, I'll get Choong to share about the accessibility testing tool. Get excited because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so there we go. So how many of you have heard of accessibility testing, right? But before we even talk about accessibility testing, let's dispel some notions about PWDs or persons with disabilities, right? So these are some common misconceptions or ideas that you may have. That is that one, PWDs have limited independence. So you may see someone on a maybe on the way to the train station. Do you realize that actually they are more or less independent? If they're wheelchair bound, they could use a wheelchair and a power assisted wheelchair to use. So nowadays we have so much available tech and even your mobile phone, what many share, right? About voiceover, about talkback on your phone. People have the right to use digital to help them access information, right? So definitely they can live independently. Next is how can PWDs have limited knowledge about technology? You know, if you scroll through Instagram, I saw a cat learning how to use an iPad, right? How come a cat can even, who's not a human, right, for all things, right, know how to use a touch interface, right? So in a way, where technology is today is almost innate. Even, well, lesser beings than us can also use, right? So who's to say that PWDs can't use tech, essentially, right? When it's so ubiquitous and so easy to use. And one more thing, if I don't have a disability, then what I do doesn't benefit me, lah, right? And clearly, I hope what you got from Manny's message is that is not true. And of course, it's hard to justify the amount of effort. So for the product managers out there who think, hey, uh, yeah, it's just another 5% of my users or even 1%. Why justify it? I hope that you understood from Manny's talk that accessibility not just benefits the minority, but it actually empowers everyone to use your technology or your web service better. And of course, you can also, of course, look the other way around. You can increase your return on customers, right? Customer satisfaction, and so on. So of course, we should think around the other way around, that PWDs are independent, that's obvious, and empowered to use tech. Uh, and even non-PWDs, like if you're aging, so much talk about seniors today, all of you, or maybe some of you, will become somewhat of a PWD in time, right? As your eyes no longer work as well, or maybe as you may not be as body able in time. And lastly, accessibility, as it is actually a belief that benefits everybody. Yeah, we should all believe in that. So how do we do that? So I'm a tech guy. I'm a DevOps engineer in GovTech for over 8 years. And before I did DevOps, I was a quality engineer. So I sit in the intersection between quality engineering and DevOps. And what I believe in and what I'm trying to teach you all today and to understand better is the notion that accessibility testing. There's two types of testing. There's manual testing, which is basically you use an accessibility tool like a keyboard to test your service through whether is it keyboard accessible. And for those who use PWDs who use screen readers, that also encompasses testing your service with or your mobile app with the screen reader, so that you can see whether does your mobile app make sense when the screen reader reads out. Of course, automated testing, and this is really how you can shift left in terms of testing, how you can automate some of these actions, not for the sake of automating and say I'm done, right? Automating and I can find all the accessibility issues, and that's not true. I will go through later on what automated testing can find and what you still need to do manual testing for. But by and large, automated testing can help you find a subset of accessibility issues. With that, I'll go through what we want to share today, which is Purple Ally. Okay, Purple Ally is a automated open source testing tool developed by us at GovTech. We have been building this over the last few years to help tech teams find and fix accessibility issues. And we have a wide range of use cases for Purple Ally. We'll show you a way to run Purple Ally today. And you can actually take some of these steps home and try out on your own, since it's open source. And not only that, we pack our tool to this worldwide standard called WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So the background of this, back in 2020, well, we had some efforts in here in GovTech. We're trying to prototype Purple Alley as a web crawler. Back then it wasn't called Purple Alley. We just thought of creating a accessibility testing tool. Why not, right? So a team of interns and myself, we cobbled together a web crawler. We went to look at, oh, what's out there, right? And for those who are more into accessibility testing already, you have heard of things like AXE, which is a automated accessibility testing library or engine. And we just think, hey, there's this thing called X, and there's this thing called a web crawler, and we want to say, can we help people test their websites for accessibility? And there we go. We just learned, Googled around, see, oh, how does X work? How does a web crawler work? And we just put that together. That was literally like a recipe, right? We just try out and see how that can work. And slowly we say, hey, actually we can get some results back in JSON, JavaScript, to say that, okay, this is what X returns me. I can get some accessibility findings there. And then things went on. We started to test out our tool. We designed a report for people to understand, because not everyone reads JSON. And right? And we came out with our first console app, yeah, in a matter of months. So this was really agile. We tried many different things. And trust me, web crawlers aren't easy to build. Yeah. And with that, we slowly expanded on the number of users we just dog food it basically in our own divisions and departments. And it showed some promise. And then, okay, honestly, COVID hit. Then some of my work took a back stage for a short while. But then we came back in 2022, and that's where we formed the A11y Team. It's what many shared, what we believe in. And the A11y Team, we continued the work on Purple Ally, and we built, firstly, right, want to help the software engineers out there. How can we quickly make this available, easy to run? Because people say, oh, I don't have to install npm, right? Or it's too difficult, I get errors, and that, all the usual things about open source. And we just package it as a Docker app, as a Docker image, and slowly from there, we built an app around it. Yeah, so these are like, we cobbled together the prototype testing tool, then we got designers on board. My designers are sitting over there, and we iterate and think about, hey, how can we make the design easier, better for non-technical people, right? Because not everyone know how to use command line and Docker and so on and so forth. And then today we have many use cases for the app, and for the more, and realize some people are even more into testing than we thought. So instead of a crawler, why not look at, someone came to me and say, hey, why not look at functional testing, right? There's a team that looks out at, who automates everything, right? Security, functional testing, deployment to dev, QA, production, so on and so forth. So we built an npm package to just a couple months ago to support that as well. So you can actually include accessibility testing right together with your functional testing. So no more excuse, right? You got your automated tests that can crawl your website. You also can do your post logins. Like if you have a tech team, you probably have a functional test that goes through a happy flow test and negative test cases and so on. And that's how we progress over the time. So today I'll start off at the very basics. Purple Alley for with CI/CD. So this is how you can import Purple Alley into your accessibility testing pipeline, as a pipeline. Okay, for those who are non-technical, don't worry, later I will show you how you can use Purple Alley without any command line background as well. Okay, so with that, okay. So how many of you have a GitHub account? Can you show hands? Great. So I see majority of you have it. So all you need to go is to a repository here. I will show what that looks like. So built a CI/CD demo pipeline here, and you can take a look, and I will explain what it does. So for the eager people here, do scan this QR code, which is shown shortly here, which you can get the link to this CI/CD repository. So you know lah, for people who use, for those who use open source, you can actually fork this repo or just create a clone of this repo, and from there you can try out on your own. It should be cost-free to everybody. Okay, so I'll give about 20 seconds for you to scan the QR code. So what this does is a set of templates designed to get you started on accessibility testing. And of course, being code, you are free to customize it, and of course, take the code and convert it into any of the other CI/CD platforms that you use. Oh yeah, forgot to mention, CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery. For those who do not know, CI/CD is used by tech teams to automate some of their actions, such as the ones I mentioned, like how you build an app first, then you test it, and then you promote your app to, say, your QA or quality assurance environment for more testing, and then production. And this is typically what you would do in this environment. So very quickly, after you've done that, you can head over up to actions. So this is where GitHub really shines as a CI/CD tool. Or well, every CI/CD tool would have something like that. And that is for you to run your code through some automated process, or through some what we call a runner. In GitHub, they call it GitHub runner. For some other tools, they may call it an agent. Like GitLab calls it a GitLab agent. So for that, you can then click on the actions. For the first time user, you may need to allow some settings. You just follow the instructions. It's very straightforward, just 2 or 3 mouse clicks. And then the sample template is available here. From there, you just click on it, and you'll see this button at the right-hand side called Run Workflow. It is essentially just that, to run your accessibility scan. So with that, click on Run. You'll be presented by a series of inputs. These are inputs that I help to pre-bake for you, so it makes your life much easier to get started and to help you understand what it does. Okay, firstly, you should use the branch main. So of course, if you copied my code, the YAML file, YML file, over to your own repository, then the branch name may be different. Next, of course, as mentioned, we have a web crawler in purple ally, so you can just input the website that you want to scan, right? So you have to start somewhere. So for today, we will just choose a random government e-service, digital service called MCI. So just MCI's info website, and you can customize it, right? So there's two critical settings that you can choose from for automated tests that doesn't need any additional code, and that is website and sitemap. So website just essentially means scanning the website, and if you have a sitemap, then you can choose the sitemap function. So if for the web developers out there, your site may have a sitemap.xml file or sitemap.txt, so on and so forth. You can use sitemap to essentially give Purple Ally a list of URLs that you want to scan. And of course, feel free to come up with your own. Like say, I just want to test 5 pages that I just newly created. Simple. Just create a file called sitemap.txt, list each URL one line at a time, and you can just push it into the same repository, and you can use that. So what this accepts is just these two. And of course, if you're using a sitemap that's locally on the same site, all you need to do is just use the URL. So for a local file, I think you know, like, just called for the web dev out there who constantly copy code and use HTML, create HTML, static HTML files. You just file : / right? And then your directory name. So you can use that too. Some performance parameters you can use include number of pages to scan. So for a comprehensive scan, you can just set about 100. Of course, if you want to really scan everything, you could set a very big number like 1,000. I mean, if you really have such a big website. And then the next one is how many concurrent scans do you want to do. So this is important for people who deploy websites to some of the cloud environments that have this thing called web application firewall, right? So nowadays, you know, there's a lot of web threat vectors such as DDoS, right? Distributed denial of service attacks. So you may actually throttle some of the websites may throttle your requests. So you may want to lower this number from 10, which is 10 requests at one time, to just 1, for example. Then you simulate more like a human, right? Opening one page at a time. So I just select default 10 here, so it's just faster. Of course, if you set 1, then the scan will take a longer time. And if you like screenshots, then screenshots will be provided. If not, you can choose none as well. And well, that's about it. If it would greatly help if you provide your name also, just to help us get to know who are users better. So I'll just put my name here and email address. So it just helps us to collect some telemetry data. Don't worry, we won't be contacting you unless you want to find out more about what we do. Just contact us. So that's my. Oops, let me get the email. Yeah. Yeah, shout out, that's our shared email account. You can feel free to email us at accessibility@tech.gov.sg. Very sexy email. Right? And that's all. That's all. So literally, these are the command line inputs that you provide to Purple Ally to get started on a scan. That's all you need. And you just click Run Workflow. So what's going to happen right now is GitHub is going to spin up a Docker runner to run the accessibility scan there. What do you need to configure? What do you need to take note? Literally not much. But if you're interested to learn more what happens in the background, do check out the CLI mode, which is the documentation that we use, the documentation that describes how we use Purple Ally in command line. CLI stands for command line interface. Yeah. So with that, I've already run the scan for about a while, so it should take about a minute or two. And so while waiting, we just take a look at what the YAML file specifies. Okay, so the inputs you saw just now are just listed here, right? These are just preparations for the inputs, just like your variables that you put in your inputs for a function. In this case, we are using inputs for a workflow. So just like literally a crash course on GitHub Actions workflow. And then the important step here is how we run the scan. So over here, if you look carefully, we first built the Docker container. So building a Docker container is an essential step to running it. For the people who are DevOps inclined here or have a full stack software engineering experience, you know, there's a way to make things faster, and that is to upload your Docker image to a registry. So feel free to just use these steps here, and then push it to a registry somewhere that you can use. For example, if you have a private runner somewhere, or you are using a different set of tools that somehow doesn't have internet access, you can also still run Purple Ally by first building the Docker container. After that, we will run Purple Ally with the command line, which is to execute the command. Of course, you first run the Docker containers as an instance. You can run it anywhere. It just uses this thing called Ubuntu or Alpine. Yeah. And then you execute, and all you do is to input the CLI interface, which is what I showed you just now. All the inputs are here as command line switches. And the most important step at the end is just to zip the results and then upload it. Of course, upload it so that you or your team can then later access it to see your accessibility scan results. Okay, so I'll go back to actions, and there we go. So 2 minutes ago, I triggered a test, and it's done already. All right, so the build plus run just literally took 2 minutes. Actually, the build part took about a minute. So of course, as mentioned, you put in a registry that will shave off 1 minute. Yeah. Okay, so you have the results here, and then what you'll get back is a report. I will show you the report again later, so we can take a look. We won't look at it now. So for those people who are who are not so technical, but you know how to use desktop apps, and I shouldn't use a browser, then we can take a look at how you can use Purple Ally in a desktop environment. Okay. So now I'll go through how you can use it in a desktop app. So instructions, you can just Google just Purple Ally and just later we will share more info how you can get this. But it's just the same place. You can go to our GitHub and get the desktop app there. And once you install it, it's literally for Mac OS, it's just a double-click install. For Windows, is just use our setup wizard that takes 3 clicks, and in a few moments you have this app shown in front of you. And this is our desktop app built by our team here together with our designers. Shout out to designers who designed this to make it as simple as possible. So the same thing, we have the inputs here as text box here. So this is the website that you need to input. So again, I will do the same. So MCI, and for today, I will just do again 10 pages. And this is where Purple Ally Desktop has many more functions than just what's possible through command line. If you click on the advanced scan options, you have the same tool, website crawl and sitemap scan, but we also have custom flow. And this has been a more important monumental feature that we built to allow people to scan accessibility past logins. So as you know, as a government agency, a lot of transactions are behind your SingPass, for example, right? Maybe other forms of login as well. And this allows people to log in past that as well. So you can choose this option, and we have instructions in our wiki. You can check it out to learn how you can just click through and scan each page. And of course, you can choose not to scan your login credentials, right? Nobody wants to see your login credentials. And get the same accessibility report, which I'll show you shortly. As mentioned, if you have your website is behind a firewall that throttles requests, you can also enable slow scan mode. So we hide, one of the design things here is we hide away the technical details about, what is the concurrency need to set and all that. So you just set here, just list it out here as a slow scan mode to make things easier. And of course, all the switches also features allows us to set is to scan in desktop, mobile, and you can customize things like your viewport, and even if you know web design, web engineering, this thing called user agent, which allows you to customize your experience on the web for your customers using different devices like iPhone, Android, and all that. So you can also choose that as well. Yeah. So I'll just do desktop for today. And yeah, we'll scan that 10 pages. So what's happening now is you don't see much. You see, there's nothing running. Basically, what's happening is the accessibility scan is being done in the background. For software engineers, it's called DevOps engineers, it's called headless. There's a browser without a head. You don't see anything on screen. And in a few moments, there you go. You have 10 pages scanned. And you can just view the report. There we go. So this is the Purple Ally's site report, accessibility site report. So I'll go through in brief an overview of what the different parts of the report is, and I can give you an example of what kind of accessibility scan results you can get with Purple Ally. So on the left, you get some scan metadata, some basic info about your scan, how many pages, you can click in and see, how many URLs you have scanned. So in this case, we have scanned 10 URLs, and these are the 10. If you really look into it, you can just click on it, and you go direct to the page. And of course, as mentioned just now, you can scan in desktop, mobile. So we also show you what actually happened. It's a desktop view, and we also show you not just how many points of failure that occurred, but it's also equally important that for some people to understand, actually, how many tests do we run, right? For the QE or QA people, is how many test points do we get here? And out of that, how many failed? So on. So these are some basic metrics of how many occurrences failed, and out of that, how many are passed. Okay, so here is the info for general understanding. So of course, Purple Ally uses WCAG as mentioned. WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, a global standard for accessibility. So we support about 16. Okay, we support 16 comprehensive WCAG criteria tests here. For some of the tests, it's partial only. So, of course, as I mentioned, not everything can be automated. And this just gives you a quick indicator of out of that 16 WCAG, comprehensive WCAG tests, how many passed. Means there were no issues in those 16, out of those 16. So in this case, this MCI website passes about passes 3/4 of the 16. So that's do a math, that's 12 lah. So we can see more details, and there are for more information you can just click into each of these criteria to understand what they mean. They can be quite technical. So later we'll show you how Purple Ally helps you to understand those issues in a more easier and succinct way. And of course, we always have our important info disclaimer here to mention that only a subset can be tested. And of course, our stand is manual testing is very important and still much needed in order to find the remainder issues that cannot be automatically tested for. On the right, we prioritize the top 5 pages. In this case, all 5 pages have some issues. And here's the meat of the Purple Ally report. We have to categorize, especially for our tech teams here and users, into 3 categories of accessibility issues: the must fix, good to fix, and needs review. So what are these different categories? What do they mean? So must fix, you can go here as a tooltip, but essentially what it really means is these are accessibility issues that have a very direct impact or significant impact on PWD's access to services. How so? These actually pose difficulty for them in terms of navigating, reading, basically the perceivability and operability of your site content. So if they can't navigate or they can't see the content, maybe the color contrast, right, is too low, then that is a significant barrier for them to your site. Good to fix are lesser issues in terms of how it impacts the users. These may be issues that only affects in a very unique circumstance, in a unique way a user navigates your site. So just for some context, some users use this thing called the voice over rotor, which essentially is a listing of all the different segments, you know, if you can think of it like a content page, right, or an index of your site just on that page, right? So some of that content may not be so apparent when they use some of these accessibility shortcuts and features. So it may not actually impact them because the content is still there. If you have no other issues, right, only good to fix, then they can still read the content. It just makes it a little bit harder potentially for them to navigate around your site. Yeah, so this is what we classify them as good to fix. And of course, we suggest teams to first look at must fix issues first because they are more severe in terms of impact to most users, and then good to fix. And finally, needs review. As you know, as all automated testing tools, there can be potential for false positives, right? Even if for the QAs here or QEs here, you know, there's things called flaky tests. So we call it when sometimes your test pass, sometimes the test pass here, it doesn't pass there. So same thing can happen when we test for accessibility. When the machine tries, because you're just running a machine test here, right? So a machine may not be able to perceive exactly whether an issue is a real issue. Maybe because it could be the way the contrast is presented, right? Sometimes one of the issues that occur when there's a potential false positive is there's a gradient on the text, right? Sometimes you design your text with some gradient, or the background is obscuring parts of the text. It's not so easy for a machine to read, and then potentially it is a false positive. So this is where these issues require a human to interact and double check first to ascertain whether it is an actual issue. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at one of the must fix issues here. So in this case, there are 5 different must fix. So one of it is buttons that must have discernible text. So how many of you design buttons, right? It could be a login button, You may design buttons for different purposes, like maybe you can have a login, you may have click here to submit, reset, etc., etc. And if you sometimes we create buttons, but we fail to include discernible text. So what discernible text? It's actually a kind of labeling for your button, so that a screen reader user would know, hey, when I hover over this button, it tells me what this button does, rather than just sometimes we don't code it correctly, it just says button. Or sometimes we want to style a button, we just use a image. That happens too sometimes, and you somehow wrapped it as a button, or browser recognizes it as a button, right? And this becomes an issue. So with that, we have it as a must fix in the Purple Alley report. When you scroll down, you will see it as a number of pages with the same issue. Altogether, you can also click in and see, oh, based on this, zoom out a little. Yeah, so you see a lot of things here, right? There's seven different, there's 7 pages in this case, but there are 3 must fix for elements for this page here. For example, this button, it's mentioned, right? It's literally just a button with a class, right? For those who know coding, you probably have a class, then have a CSS somewhere to style the button. And there's, well, literally nothing, right? Nothing in this button. So what that happens is, obviously the button is styled. In this case, you can, as a sighted user, you can see this as a mailbox logo, which is the email icon. But to a screen reader, what this reads out is essentially button. Yeah. So think about it, right? If you blindfold yourself and use a keyboard, and the computer reads back to you, all it reads out is button. And how do you fix it? Purple Alley provides you a way for you to fix it in this case, in 5 different ways. You can use, you can just read on your own here, but basically it tells you there's no inner text that's visible. So one way to fix it is just put inner text lah. But then of course a designer may not, or front-end engineer may not want to do it, because then the words come out, right? Email, right? So that's why they don't put in the label. So as a workaround, or in a way, you can put ARIA label, which is something that only the screen reader will pick up and say, oh, ARIA label is there, so I'll read, okay, email, ARIA label equals, yeah, what it is, right? So you can also use labeled by to like format it differently. So you can read up more on this just by Googling, but you don't need to Google, because right here in Purple Alley, here, we provide you with documentation to learn more about this issue and how you can fix it. So you can click right here, and this is really a first step. For a lot of engineers, they don't learn accessibility other ways, right? By learning going through a textbook or going through a course. You can essentially click in, and we have a help guide by DK University. Reach out to them. They are the ones who develop the frameworks that make Purple Ally possible, and many other tools, not just us, but the likes of Google, Microsoft, who use the same engine. You can then see, oh, okay, but same thing, right? Button must have discernible text. And as mentioned, this is a critical bug, critical accessibility bug, because a screen reader user really cannot understand what a button does when it's not labeled, when it just says button. Again, the conformance standards is the same thing. We have printed out the conformance standards here, back to WCAG, and you get examples of code there. So with that, I hope you got a better understanding of how you can use Purple Ally's report to fix your accessibility issues. Yeah. Okay, so I will then go back to our slides here. Oh, where's the... So right, so after sharing all this, how does it benefit you, right? If anything you can take home is, firstly, as a product owner, start using it, and provide that, take a look at the accessibility scan results and think about, hey, knowing what I know now, shouldn't I use that information with that information, that knowledge, to prioritize some of these issues to get my team to fix it? Very simple. Just take the HTML that we generated and just email it to your team lah. But not so simple, right? Because you may want to prioritize some of the things, put it in your Jira, your project management tracker. Of course, once you have that info, you can then consider and list accessibility as part of your definition of done, DODs, so that you can start reducing the amount of accessibility issues that's commonly flagged in your product. For the user experience designers, you can then, of course, use this to test your components, right? Because UX designers sometimes, or front-end engineers, right, may look at components online. You can download some JavaScript components and say, hey, are they usable or not? So I may want to start trying out the components and start testing them for accessibility. And some of the components that you saw just now are repeated across many different pages. So I can take them and then just reuse them and test them. Of course, for the software engineers, very important, right? We give you the code level fix. For some of the issues, you can also use our ChatGPT enabled responses to get accessibility results that are tailored to that specific issue, and just literally copy and paste the code and make some modifications there. So I hope that makes it much easier for you to learn, especially the documentation provided by Purple Airline. And then, yeah, with that, this is a comprehensive overview of Purple Airline. We'll be here to mingle with you for a short while so you can understand more about what we do. And so right now, I'd like to hand over to our boss Ming to talk about what's next for our LA team.
No pressure. Yes. All right. So mindful of the time, so I'll keep this short. Thanks very much for spending the evening with us. So my colleagues Manny and Choong have walked you through a little bit of what the general ethos is, our thinking around it, our approach to design principles, and then subsequently the easiest way we can help you if we're not there in person to start on your accessibility journey. So the natural question is, what are we going to do after this? One of the things, one of the questions we get a lot actually is, you talk a great game. This is wonderful and I really want to help, but I have absolutely no idea what good accessibility looks like. Like, what's the baseline? So the big project for us this year is to establish some kind of guideline to articulate very clearly, this is minimally what you got to do. These are minimally the things you should think about. And if you've got a lot of time, a lot of interest, and a lot of resources, these are the other things you can do to do even better. But at least to get started, here's the basics. So don't boil the ocean, right? You got to start somewhere. So that's the big project this year in terms of the longer term goal, establishing some kind of baseline, both for public sector, because if we cannot establish what's good ourselves, we are in no position to tell other people what to do. But as Manny articulated earlier, actually most of the things that people use are private sector apps. So as much as I want to make government services accessible, you are far more likely to use WhatsApp or Instagram than you are to check your CPF. Unless you're very rich, in which case, let's talk. Right. So that's the first one. Let's try and get some standards out so people know what good looks like. Hopefully we will get through the public sector and then eventually we'll reach private sector. In terms of the tooling that you saw just now, Jian gave a very comprehensive overview of what we're doing in terms of desktop solutions. But again, the world is increasingly mobile. So I can make websites as accessible as I want, but chances are you're probably interacting on some kind of handheld device. So we're trying to figure out how we can do testing in that space, how to help people in the same way we've done with websites. Anyone who spent any time trying to build a mobile app will know that's much easier said than done, which is why I'm not committing to any timeline. But I will publicly say we are working on it because we know realistically that's where the pain points are. Hopefully we'll have something to showcase. So if we do this again in 1 year's time, we'll have something cool that we can maybe show off. That's tooling. Longer term, what we'd actually like is to work with more people outside our immediate circle. So a lot of the feedback that we've gotten is from other public service officers because that's the space that we play in. The feedback that we're getting from private sector is often quite opportunistic. It's either friends who are in related spaces or friends of friends who've introduced us. So any of you here, if you are in a space where you're practicing this yourselves, or you're very interested, or you just maybe want to understand a bit better how this might apply to your service, please feel free to get in touch. It also helps us to make our tooling more comprehensive and also better informs our approach to how we're doing this long term. For the more specific questions, I apparently now get to Sabo Manny to do Q&A with me. Yes. Yes. So if you have any burning questions, please fire away now. If it's something that's very specific and you don't want to ask in a general setting, we will be floating around after, so come and see us. If you want to have a try of Purple Hats, Purple Allies, sorry, yourselves, there are 2 stations at the back, along with our very good-looking team, who will very happily help you out. If you want to try the command line version, like, go ahead. All power to you. But if you want to try the desktop version, you can go to those 2 stations later. Right? Cool. All right, let's get this party started.
Very chill, we'll stand around. That's what I heard lah. Y'all will just answer whatever they throw at us, right?
Yeah, so if you got any question, right, just raise your hand and we'll pass the mic to you.
Thank you very much for the sharing. I found it very insightful and educational, actually. I noted that many shared about the target to get to 100% of the high volume government websites being accessible. I wonder if you could share a bit further about some of the challenges. Is it to getting there? It's ambitious. Are the challenges you face technical ones concerning developers, and or is it really more like the logistics of time and manpower and so on?
That's a great question. You want to join the public service?
I was from the public service.
I see. Explains.
Yeah, I know.
Explains.
So
I
so
can tell. It's multi-causal, right? It's all about like if you are familiar with systems thinking, right? There's many causes to this problem of getting to 2030 full 100% accessibility. So I know that's almost a cop-out answer. The key lever that we see that's really moving, right, is it's two-way. It's two-way. So bosses need awareness that this is important, right? Executive sponsorship is one of the key things if you want to part of change management. So finding the right executive to sponsor the right thing is very important. But you can have a boss that sponsors things. Yeah, let's go, right? But the soldiers don't follow. That's another thing. So we do a two-pronged thing. So with standards and guides, we speak with the policy folks, the governance folks on how we can intervene on that front. But what we do is we equip the engineers, because one of the things that I was surprised when I found out is Swiss that come out of universities, accessibility is like an elective module. It's not compulsory. Maybe you're interested, you maybe learn a little bit about accessibility, but not the techniques of remediating accessibility. So a large part of our workforce is a very nascent, like a discipline in Singapore. Yeah, maybe in the States, because you can get sued, yeah, there's a motivation to learn to build yourself accessibly. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to pick up where Manny laid off, in lots of jurisdictions overseas, like the US, the UK, the EU, Australia, there's actually a legislative requirement, and it's usually couched in anti-discrimination legislation. So you came here for tech and not law, so I'll simplify. So it basically means I need to have access to your information, if not you're discriminating against me. We don't have that legal requirement here, so it is more ground up, like please do it because it's a good thing to do, rather than there's some kind of legal thing hanging over your head. Whether one is right or wrong, it's up for debate, because something we do see overseas, notwithstanding the legal requirement, often people just kind of do it to tick a checkbox and it's still not actually accessible, which is where the lawsuits happen. Um, so one thing here, the biggest challenge I would say is just raising awareness at the outset. Thankfully, actually, we've seen in the last 2 years a lot more people, a lot more ministers, a lot more like heads of divisions are increasingly warming to the idea themselves. Like we don't have to go and say anymore, hey, this is important. A lot more people are naturally coming to it. So the koyok is working. Yeah.
So just keep at it. That's the short answer. Yeah. If you want to ever come back, link us. Yeah. Sorry. So yes.
Hello, thanks for sharing with us your work here. I have two questions. Let's see if I remember them. So one of them, I know that your focus is really much on accessibility for blindness, but for a lot of apps, especially in Singapore and for elderly citizens, it's more related to language. So I wonder, have you looked into languages? There's four official languages in Singapore. And my second question, ah, what are your thoughts on like i- either for deaf or for elderly using natural language, especially with generative AI and things like that? Is that something you've explored as well?
So I'll just quickly take down, Ming will fill it in. So great question, because I just got that question this morning as well from someone else. So first, why visual impairment is a thing that we look into. It's because people with visual impairment are the most disadvantaged when it comes to technology, because 90% of technology is visual. So even if you lose one part of your sense, you can listen, maybe you can speak, or you have a motor disability, you still can perceive what's on the internet. But if you have vision impairment and it's not compatible with a screen reader, that whole thing is invisible to you. So that's why the focus for vision impairment, because we really want to serve the most marginalized with technology. So that's the first question, the first answer. Regarding four languages, that's something we are looking into. So before I was working on this team, I was working on the SingPass app. And for apps with very, very high volume, that's something we are looking into. So translation is hard work. So we were also from the team where Trace Together was around, not only four languages, I think we went 8 or 9, 10, come on, 10, man. So the short answer is we are looking into, but that's really resource intensive. I don't think we have a way to crack that yet, because machine translation, at least in this part of the world, still doesn't capture like nuance really well. Like I know DeepL, French people have said that DeepL's translation, it's really good for a French person, like it's colloquial enough, but maybe not for the local languages here to capture. One of the things I noticed was some app that used check-in and is translated to Mandarin. That check-in, the context of that word was actually check-in to a hotel, which has a bit of sleaze to it. But actually that was check-in your luggage or something. So machine learning and machine translation still not there yet. You still need a lot of manual translators to do the work. Second question, it's natural language. We are looking into that. That's one of the white space explorations that I can't really share much about yet. But what's key here is we are engaging the folks from the community, folks who are deaf, capital D deaf, and small d deaf as well. What's key here? It's important that videos have subtitles, but that's also something beyond our control, because it's a content creation thing rather than a technological thing. But we are working with colleagues that are, especially if we do videos. So when we do our own content creation, we live by our own standards. I am no video editor by any means, but when we ran LI Week and we had some videos, and I literally hand subtitled the whole 2 minute opening speech. Of course, with some pipe through your videos through YouTube. YouTube's English subtitling is really good, and you just edit it accordingly. I did it manually too. So we really believe in what we preach, essentially. Yeah, but that's the short answer. Yeah.
Some of it also, again, goes back to a policy thing. And actually, the considerations around translation languages is something that MCI is looking into at the moment. Again, some of this actually was expedited because of what happened during COVID. We realized that, yes, English is very commonly used, but actually, a lot of the folks that you want to reach are not necessarily people who read or speak English very comfortably. But more to come. Yeah, MCI is looking into it.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. I think it's really good that you guys have the core principles that you're trying to get the industry to adopt. But I guess one of my questions is, when we think about elderly design, right? It's not just like for color blindness and things like that, but also thinking about intuitive design, like the sizing of the buttons or information overload that could exist on a page. Do you guys have best or common practices that you're trying to enforce on that front?
It's an interesting question because the more we focus on accessibility, the more we realize actually there's a very natural overlap, a very important overlap actually with usability. So at what point is it a usability issue versus an accessibility issue? So to the elder question in particular, we're trying not to bucket it either. We're just generally saying it's sort of good design practice rather than trying to say it's column A or column B. And because we try and promote good design practice, it also removes some of the barriers in people's minds. They then become a little less uh, intimidated, thinking, oh, this is a very special thing that I have to design specially for. It's like, no, just use common sense, right? Just make it easier for anybody to use. The benefit is if you've made it easier for them to use, you should have a good time using it too. Yeah.
That's a great question. I think that reframe is very important, especially with your stakeholders as well, because like we also must not see the seniors as a particular demographic that's very amorphous. Like there are seniors that are really really tech literate as well. I mean, look at China. That's another example that they have, right? So we need to look into what's the thinking style of different population types, and looking into what forms of usability fits what sorts of users. Yeah, so the seniors as a homogeneous group, it's not true. Yeah, there are seniors who are outliers, and I think it's very important to look at the distinctions between people who are aged as well. Yeah. No.
Are there any more questions? If not, maybe we can break up the group and you guys can try out
Play with our
any,
tool.
yeah.
Give us feedback. Yeah. Download it. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you. Thanks for coming, man.